So, Selma's directed by Ava DuVernay and starring David Oyelowo, who plays the role of Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, this is a true story. This is American history. It really happened, and it feels like you're watching. If someone had a camera back in the day and was just following Dr. Martin Luther King around his house and riots and stuff like that, that's what it felt like. It was a moving performance. It was authentic. That's one of the words I'm going to use a lot in this review. Is it felt so real. It felt like you were on the streets with Dr. Martin Luther King, and it produces real emotions in you, which is if your movie can move someone and make them feel something that they haven't felt before, that is fantastic.
Right. It's a great character piece. David Oyelowo, like you said, it feels very authentic as Dr. Martin Luther King. He loses himself. He becomes Dr. Martin Luther King in this role, and Selma is a movie that follows Dr. Martin Luther King through a very specific time in his life. It's like the middle ground. It's almost, it's not. He hasn't quite gotten to the point in his life where everything's okay,
Well, I mean,
yeah, exactly. But he hasn't gotten there. He's still fighting this uphill battle. He hasn't hit that plateau yet, and he's still struggling for it. And it focuses on that, and then it goes from that until it goes to the speech he gave at Birmingham, Alabama, and it is a emotional roller coaster ride throughout these scenes in which you see the brutality of mankind to one another, and the way that we treat each other. It's very stirring, it's very powerful emotion, very raw emotion that you're feeling throughout the entire time, and that's by everybody.
Yeah.
Tim Roth was great. He's the governor of Alabama in this movie, and he is basically the antagonist. And Dr. Martin Luther King is struggling, not only with civil rights and trying to get equality, he's struggling at his home and with his family life and his personal life. And you see him as a human. He is brought down to the lowest person a human can, lowest that a human being can be. And it's very, very authentic, very raw, very powerful performance by David. And it's just, it brings another dimension to this character. They don't put him on a pedestal. They don't say he's, the second coming or anything. They say that, he's a very human. He's a very good man. You see that all throughout the movie. He's a very good man, but he's very flawed. And, who isn't?
Yeah, especially it humanizes him. That's exactly right, Matt. That he's humanized and he's brought down to a relatable level. It shows him how he doesn't always know what's going on or what's going to happen, and but the thing is, he's not afraid. He's not afraid. He believes in what he's fighting for. It's not some political agenda. It's not like Lyndon B. Johnson does in the movie and says, "Hold off right now, Congress has my back." He looks Lyndon B. Johnson in the eye and says, "No, you have to do something now." And they ignore him. And instead of pouting and crying and giving up, he says, "I'm going to take actions into my own hands. I believe in what I'm doing, and there's people who will follow me." And that's what's fantastic and it's a testament to Dr. Martin Luther King's life, especially, because he got people motivated and to work as a team, as a cohesive team, to fight against the oppression of basic human rights. And people are beaten in this film. They're spit on, they're shot, they're killed. It shows all the brutalities. It doesn't hold back anything. And I think that if they had done that, it would have been a shame. But they stayed true to his life and the real life events, and I think it's one of the better biopics I've seen, because this really happened. This is a real event. I cannot fault the movie for that. It stays so true to that. Now, as a movie, if we look back subjectively as a movie, it's all right. It definitely deserves its Oscar nomination, but should it win? I don't think so. I think there are a lot more exciting films. I think the reason I love Birdman so much is because it doesn't let up on the excitement the entire time. I don't think there's a dead point in the movie. This has a few dry spots. It's usually the scenes while they're waiting. It's usually when they're waiting for something to happen that it's boring. But man, there are some great shots. I would recommend seeing this film just for the fact that the performances are so good. They're seamless, and you see human beings when you watch this movie.
Well, yeah, the performances are great, but one of the biggest critiques I had personally with the film, and like we said, you know, I can praise this film all day. I can argue both sides, but one of the biggest critiques I personally had with the film was you said they were waiting.
Yeah.
It seemed like each, there were scenes that were key to this movie. It was A, B, C, it was very letter. But then, sometimes they would go, okay, we need to hit point A, we need to hit point B, we need to hit point C, and we need to hit these points, but there were scenes in between them too. And those were these slow periods, the very, the cool down periods where, like you said, they were just waiting. They were waiting for something to happen. And, they kept it interesting because they kept him around, interesting characters, and they kept him as an interesting person, and showed like real human. But the problem with it is that it gets slow. It drags on at points, and there are points where you're sitting in the theater, and at least for me, there were points where I was sitting in the theater and I was like, okay, I get it. Let's move on. Come on, something happened. And of course, like you said, it's true to the events. It's very true to the events. And not knowing a lot about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I really enjoyed this film for a biopic. But as a movie, just break it down. Was it entertaining? Would I recommend you go see this? I'd say for the performances. If you're really into acting, or you really like just good acting, go see it. Or wait to rent it. But is this a movie that you have to, if you're a cinema lover and you don't see this movie, should you? I don't think you have to. I think it's one that you can skip. I don't think you should per se, but I think it's one that you can skip. And like I said, good movie. It barely misses that great mark, but it's hits the emotional cues that it needs to. It hits the acting cues that it needs to, and it left me wanting a little bit more.
Yeah. On that note, though, I will say, we've had a lot of biopics in the past few years. We had Lincoln, we had 12 Years a Slave, and now Selma. And I would say that this movie was more entertaining and a better film than Lincoln and 12 Years a Slave combined.
Oh, definitely.
I think that this did something though neither one of those movies did, and that was move me. And I think it automatically trumps the other two based on that fact. Lincoln, it's Daniel Day-Lewis the entire time. He's Lincoln. And 12 Years a Slave, it's a sad story, but did it move me to the effect that Selma did? No, Selma reached me on that level, and that's why I can appreciate it more than those two films. So I would recommend seeing it, like Matt said, for the acting. And if you're a fan of Dr. Martin Luther King, go see this movie, because this is fantastic. It definitely is a great history lesson. And I think that classes should see this movie. This would be great for classes.
And the best part about this movie was I walked in the bathroom after this film, and there were two black gentlemen, and they said something that kind of moved me. They said, we forgot what we went through, and we forgot how far we've come as a culture, as humanity has evolved, how as we come as a culture. And he says, wow, it makes you really appreciate where we are today as a society. So guys, let us know what you thought of Selma. Do you think it deserves the Oscar? Do you think it got snubbed for an Oscar? Let us know in the comments below. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe for more great content.